I'm meteorologist Peter Chan, coming to you from the National Weather Service through a unique partnership with Alaska Public Media. Welcome to the Alaska Weather Show. It is Thursday, July 28th, 2022. And if you'd like additional weather information on top of what I provide in this broadcast, you can go to weather.gov. It is the National Weather Service's online presence. You'll see a big map of the continental U.S. come up with Alaska and Hawaii in the lower left. And if you click on this map, it is interactive. It allows you to get forecast watches, warnings, and advisories, and much more information for any location in the country. It's great to check up on family and friends looking at the latest things. It looks like a severe thunderstorm watch in parts of the northeast U.S., heat advisories along the Virginia, North Carolina coast, also the Arkansas, parts of Texas, Louisiana. We have flood watches, Kentucky into West Virginia, and a broad area flood watches out across the interior southwest due to the threat of thunderstorms and flash flooding. And then the Pacific Northwest, Washington State, Oregon, western Idaho, northwest Nevada, and Northern California under the gun for heat advisories and excessive heat warnings. Temperatures 90s. Some areas will top 100 degrees. Well, I was on vacation for a couple weeks. I visited back home. I'm originally from Michigan, the land of the Chippewa and the Ojibwa. Here's a beautiful sunset at Sleeping Bear Point, which is up on the northern portion of Lake Michigan near Glen Arbor. Just a beautiful time of year to enjoy the Great Lakes. We have some of the finest world-class beaches without all of the crowds. And last evening in Anchorage, I went up to look at the overlook there of Cook Inlet to see if I could see any noctilucent clouds. And this was midnight twilight last evening, July 27th. Beautiful scene. I could not see any noctilucent clouds, but this is what they look like. They are these whitish blue, electric blue clouds that appear in July into early August in the high latitudes of the northern hemisphere during the northern hemisphere summer. They are the Earth's highest clouds. They form 50 miles above the surface. They're the result of just traces of water vapor interacting with meteorite dust. And they believe they become more frequent in recent years, possibly because of some climate change issues, also because of the introduction of more rocket vapor from various rocket launches that introduce some of that water vapor into the highest levels of the atmosphere. But nevertheless, best time to view or look for the noctilucent clouds. You can't see them every night. They're kind of still an infrequent thing, but something we might see a few times a summer. From latter half of August into latter half of July into early August. So we still have a high surf advisory in effect for the eastern Arctic coast. It may be extended a bit longer into this evening, and generally from around Dead Horse through Kaktovik, some higher surf. There could also be some patchy frost across the northeastern mainland tonight between the Alaska Range up through the North Slope. So if you do have a garden going that you've been able to hold on to, you may want to take protective measures there with a few of those sensitive plants. And as I just mentioned, the noctilucent cloud season is underway and continues into about early August. Once we get to mid and late August, we start to see the aurora season for the northern lights, because we finally get enough darkness so that we can start to see them again. And overall, it's looking like the mainland is going to be cooler in the west, but a bit wetter in the east here as we head into early August. So today, up there toward the central Arctic coast, Dead Horse, getting light rain. Temperatures there only in the mid-upper 30s, 37 degrees, so a cool rain there. Meanwhile, south central areas are enjoying a lot of sun. Anchorage, Merrill Field, sunny, 71 around 2 o'clock this afternoon. Plenty of sunshine extending up there through the Mat-Su Valley with the temperatures there in the 70s as well. And looking at the hazards map, we have that high surf advisory at least until 6 p.m. this Thursday evening. It could possibly be extended by the Fairbanks Weather Service office, but I can't tell you at this moment as I'm recording. But the area I highlighted in blue has the potential for some areas of patchy frost tonight. It wouldn't be anything too widespread, but just something to keep in mind if you have any sensitive plants you want to protect in your garden. And looking at fire danger, nothing like it was a month ago. It's still some pockets of high to very high Yukon Flats up through the middle upper Tanana Valley and areas of the Copper River Basin, but quite an improvement from what we were seeing here late in June and early July before the big widespread rains hit much of the mainland. And looking at the satellite imagery, we have a plume of moisture still coming up into parts of the Panhandle, not as intense as it was last night and in through this morning. Areas east of Yakutat, we had a report from Dry Bay of over 2.7 inches of rainfall, so that was a pretty good soaking, and the showers there in the Panhandle will be shifting into the southern parts of the Panhandle and diminishing as we go through the day on Friday. Meanwhile, to the west, back there around St. Paul, you see the curl in the clouds. That's a pretty strong mid-level system. Surface low pressure down toward the central Aleutians is going to split. One part of it's going to go to the north across the southeastern portion of the Bering Sea, and another part of it's going to redevelop on the south side of the Alaska Peninsula. And within that area, there's enough dynamics. There could even be a rumble of thunder there over the southeastern Bering Sea or on the south side of the Alaska Peninsula there and through the North Pacific as we go into Friday afternoon. So there is one weak low up there in the northern Gulf. We have that stronger low crossing the central Aleutians now, and then a cold front up there through the north slope that's brought that mix of some light rain and snow. And then for later tonight into early Friday morning, we see the low there in the north Gulf continue to weaken, still some lingering showers in the Panhandle. Sprinkle flurries there, still possible north slope areas early on Friday morning. And then by Friday afternoon, we see that low splitting across both sides of the Alaska Peninsula with some pretty good showers there and through Bristol Bay and on the North Pacific side and southwest there of Kodiak Island. Showers over the Panhandle will start to diminish as we go through into the day Saturday. Still, those trough could bring in some more showers there across parts of the Panhandle over the weekend, and especially up into south central areas around Prince William Sound. Could be a bit soggy here all the way up into the Copper River Basin as we go through Saturday afternoon. Temperatures relatively mild Friday morning, 50s in through the Panhandle, 40s and near 50. Anchorage Bowl down around 50 come Friday morning, and relatively a warm day again across south central interior, low and middle 70s, including Anchorage up through Talkeetna, Glen Allen, McGrath, elsewhere, with some scattered light showers, lower 60s there through a good chunk of the Panhandle, though it was quite warm a couple of days ago. We had readings upper 70s to near 80 degrees down there around Metlakatla, as well as Ketchikan and Craig. And then Saturday morning, look for lows generally lower mid-50s Panhandle and lower 50s, a little higher where there is cloud cover along the western Gulf Coast down toward Kodiak, and then a little cooler for the southeast interior with a cloud cover on Saturday, generally around 60 to maybe lower 60s, generally lower to maybe mid-60s Panhandle. Across the north, Friday morning, pockets of frost possible. Number temperatures getting down into the 30s there, Yukon River Valley, Brooks Range, North Slope. Friday afternoon, still some 60s to near 70 around Fairbanks, say on over toward Northway and McGrath. And then Saturday morning lows, still some readings down near freezing there, especially North Slope, Arctic Coast. And Saturday afternoon, we could see a few readings rebound back up above 70 up there through east central areas, including Yukon Flats and along the Alcan border. Friday morning, we're going to get lows upper 40s to near 50 there through the southwest interior, extending out through the Aleutians. 60s to near 70 through the middle and portion of the Yukon and upper Kuskokwim river basins. Otherwise, look for 50s along the Alaska Peninsula and the Aleutians. Saturday morning lows generally will be near or just above 50 across the southwest interior. Upper 40s, mid 40s as you get out through the tip of the Alaska Peninsula and the Aleutians. And Saturday afternoon temperatures will be a bit cooler with the cloud cover and showers there across the southwest coast and southwest interior, generally near or just above 60 degrees. So the temperature forecast for August 3rd through the 7th, the beginning part of August, is looking to average below normal across much of the state, centered on the west side, from the central interior west through Nome, Kotzebue down through Bethel. Also a bit cooler than normal and through the Panhandle. And then looking at precipitation Precipitation could average a bit above normal across the east central interior around Fairbanks up toward Arctic Village, Yukon Flats and the Alcan border, and also a little bit above normal there in the northern half of the Panhandle. Otherwise, the rest of the state around Cook Inlet and through the west side and in through the Alaska Peninsula should average near normal for the beginning of August.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Well, it's now time for your aviation weather. If you have a flight planned here Friday into Saturday, the main weather feature will be area of low pressure riding along the central eastern Aleutians on the Bering side. It's going to remain in the lower Bering Sea, and then a secondary low is going to develop on the south side of the Alaska Peninsula. And then high pressure sits way back up in the upper portions of the Chukchi Sea, while low pressure out over the Beaufort Sea there just north of the eastern Arctic and Canadian Arctic coast will begin to pull away and weaken. But widespread IFR conditions are anticipated along the North Slope and Arctic coast, as well as areas of the Gulf in through the Panhandle. The rain showers there will continue across areas in the northern half of the Panhandle Friday morning before shifting southward by afternoon. And we see a broad area of IFR conditions from the Bering Strait down through the central Bering Sea and in through the Aleutian chain up into the at least southern portions of the Alaska Peninsula. Could even be an isolated thunderstorm there on the south side of the Alaska Peninsula, just southwest there of Kodiak Island. IFR conditions are anticipated there along the northeastern Gulf Coast, much of the Panhandle, especially the north and central areas. And then again along the Arctic coast from Utqiagvik eastward to Kaktovik. And then on Saturday morning, we still see IFR conditions there along the areas of the Arctic coast through the Bering Strait, and then rather extensive Bristol Bay back through the central Bering across the Alaska Peninsula into the Gulf and much of the Panhandle. Saturday afternoon, we still see some lingering IFR conditions there along the north central Gulf Coast, as well as in through the northern portion of the Panhandle and back out through the southwest western arm of the Alaska Range, and then up through the Bering Sea, Bering Strait, and a small area there again around and east of Utqiagvik. So Anaktuvik Pass will start out IFR, especially on the north end, Friday morning, giving way to VFR conditions by afternoon. Same thing, Atigun Pass, IFR on the north side, becoming VFR across the area Friday afternoon. Generally, VFR conditions are anticipated across much of the mainland, especially Lake Clark, Merrill, as we round up through the Alaska Range. Rainy Pass as well as Windy Pass will be VFR, and further east through Isabel and Mentasta. As we drop a little southwestward, Tanita Pass should stay VFR, as will Portage Pass. But again, as you get out further down, out over the Gulf, you'll encounter IFR conditions. And certainly as you go east there through the southeastern portion of the state, the Panhandle will see rather widespread IFR conditions there across the north and north central areas, including Chilkoot and White on Friday. Freezing levels, surface freezing line is down here along the Arctic coast there, Beaufort Sea Friday morning. It bumps up to 8,000 feet across the central interior along the Yukon River there southward, and then upwards to 10,000 feet across south central areas, and then 12 and even 14,000 feet there down toward Haida Gwaii. Coolest pocket of there is back out over the northwestern portion of the Bering Sea, between 8,000 and 16,000 feet. There could be a little lighter side and moderate icing, between 14,000 and a flight level of 21,000 feet there along the south side of the Alaska Peninsula and southwest of Kodiak Island. And then way in the north, there could be some moderate icing along the far eastern Arctic coast into the Canadian Arctic coast, Kaktovik eastward at 7,000 to 15,000 feet, and then perhaps above 15,000 feet there across the southern third of the Panhandle Friday afternoon. Jet stream level winds are strongest there over northwest Canada to 90 knots at 30,000 feet, and then we see a broad belt of 60 to 70 knot winds along and south of the Aleutians into the North Pacific, curling back up into the southwest with the southwest winds there 55 knots. 9,000 foot winds, we see a broad area of 35 to 40 knot winds south of Kodiak Island there and through the North Pacific. And then as we bring it down to 3,000 feet, we kind of see that double barrel low, the split, one in the lower Bering Sea north of the eastern Aleutians and the tip of the Alaska Peninsula. Another one redeveloping there on the south side of the Alaska Peninsula. And around it we could see some winds upwards of 35 knots there, the far southern end of the west arm of the Alaska range, and that could lend towards some turbulence between the surface and 6,000 feet, and then further west out over the central to western Aleutians, ADAC area there, we could see surface to 4,000 foot turbulence during the day on Friday. So that wraps up your aviation forecast. If you are able to get out, have a safe flight, and be sure to check the latest conditions and forecast.
Hey Stargazers, Trace here. Jupiter is about to go into retrograde. Oh no, really, it'll be fine. First, let's find it. Hit the darkness after midnight any night this week and look east. There you'll see a bright dot. That is the gas giant Jupiter, the biggest planet in our solar system. It could contain our whole planet in a single red atmospheric storm. If you could watch it moving, which we can show you here thanks to the magic of television, it would appear to move one way, then turn around and go backwards. This is called retrograde motion. Every planet moves around the sun at different speeds. When we pass another planet in orbit, it appears to switch directions. This freaks some people out, but it's just an optical illusion. This happens often when driving, walking, or whatever. There's no ill intent. Jupiter is just on its own path. It'll go forward again in late November. Keep looking up.
The Yukon Flats National Wildlife Refuge is a refuge in Alaska. It's the third largest refuge in the National Wildlife Refuge system. North of Fairbanks, it's a vast ecosystem of wetlands. What drives this refuge are natural forces of fire, ice, and water.
The Yukon Flats has got a really interesting history. Back in the late 50s, early 1960s, there was a proposal to dam the Yukon River down by Rampart, which is downstream of the Yukon Flats. And it was a hydroelectric proposal. And so in order to assess the merits of that proposal, people got together because they were a little bit concerned about what the impacts might be on the Yukon Flats, the habitat, and all the people living within the Yukon Flats Refuge. There's quite a few people living within the refuge. We have 7 villages. So in order to figure out how special the Yukon Flats was, the Fish and Wildlife Service banded over 40,000 ducks within the Yukon Flats. And using the band return information, they found out that those ducks were using 45 of the 50 lower 48 states. They were using 7 foreign countries, and they were using most of the provinces over in Canada, as well as all the major flyways down in the lower 48. And so that identified that the Yukon Flats was a special breeding area, and that information, along with a lot of other public information that was gathered during that whole process, really ensured that the dam never did go in, and thus the habitat was preserved.
So what that did is it really highlighted the national importance of this area and how important conserving this particular area is for conserving many other natural areas in the lower 48 and even across the continent.
To protect the Yukon Flats Refuge because we have responsibility towards our future generations to leave land protected in the state that it is now. The Yukon Flats is a wild place. The ecosystem is intact and functioning, and you can't find that very many places in the rest of the U.S.
The Yukon Flats Refuge is among the most important places for ducks. So each spring, millions of ducks, and in addition to shorebirds and geese, raptors and loons, they all fly to the refuge to nest and rear their young, and the reason they are attracted to this area is because it has really enriched wetlands. There are lots of nutrients in the wetlands that provide a lot of food for the growing young.
We also have a lot of predator, prey species like bears and black bears, grizzly bears, wolves. We also have a lot of moose and fur bearers that use the refuge. So overall, there's just a great diversity of both upland, lowland, and migratory bird species that use the refuge.
Most people know the flats as a duck nursery, and that was one of the main purposes that was designed for, but a lot of recent research over the last decade has really illustrated how important it is to a variety of native endemic fish species for subsistence and recreational and commercial fisheries throughout the entire Yukon River Basin and out to supporting commercial fisheries out to the Bering Sea as well. So it supports a variety of different whitefish and salmon species, the northern pike, a little bit of everything that people rely on as cultural identities, but also for subsistence resources and where people go to recreate and enjoy being outside.
The type of recreation that you're going to find on Yukon Flats Refuge is very primitive. And what that often does is it gives people a complete break from some of the stresses of today's world. There are no cell phone towers out there. There are no roads. There are no trails. So any type of recreation that people have is entirely natural. The lands and waters within the Yukon Flats National Wildlife Refuge are open to the public to enjoy. And that's a really important tenet upon which the United States is built.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back, and we conclude today's show with the marine weather segment and looking at the sea ice edge. Still some areas of ice there off of the northern Arctic coast, especially north there of Prudhoe Bay. Otherwise, much of the lower Chukchi Sea is open with the exception along the Russian coastline there. And we expect the normal summer melt-off to continue there in the far north. Across the southeast panhandle, winds will be a bit on the variable side, 5 to 10 knots. Waves running generally a couple feet there in the inner channels. Outer channels, look for south-southwest winds, Sitka south down toward Craig. Waves 5 feet, and then winds will be more southeast to easterly north of Sitka through off of Gustavus and Yakutat, with waves 4 to 5 feet there in the open waters of the Gulf. On Saturday, winds will be out of the south-southeast, 10 to 15 knots across the inner channels with waves of 2 to 3 feet. Outer Gulf coastal waters there, we're looking at 10 to 15 knot south-southeasterly winds and waves generally running 3-4 feet. For the northwestern Gulf and Cook Inlet on Friday, variable winds around 10 knots common there, middle upper Cook Inlet, Prince William Sound off the Kenai, waves generally just a few feet at best. A mixed bag southeast to variable winds 15 to as high as 20 knots at the entrance of Cook Inlet with waves around 4 or 5 feet. On Saturday, look for more of a northeasterly wind flow across most of the region, 15 knots in Prince William Sound with waves running a couple feet. Mid-upper Cook Inlet, 2 to 3 foot waves. And then as we get down toward the entrance of Cook Inlet and off of Kodiak, winds will be out of the east-northeast, 20 to 25 knots and waves running generally around 4 feet. On Friday, there'll be one area of low pressure in the southeast Bering Sea north of the Alaska Peninsula, another one trying to take shape just southwest of Kodiak Island. Winds will be northeasterly 20 knots, Shelikof Strait, but kind of coming in, flowing in toward that lower trough south of Kodiak Island, and then turning more southwesterly south of Sandpoint at 20 knots. Otherwise, east to southeast winds 20 to 25 knots, Bristol Bay down to north of Cold Bay, and waves running a few feet there on the Bering side. For Saturday, low pressure tracks just northeast of Kodiak, so we have a north-northeast wind down through Shelikof Strait at 15 knots, waves 3 feet. Look for west-southwest winds on the North Pacific side of the Alaska Peninsula, waves running 5-6 feet, and southwest winds 15 knots with waves of 2 to 3 feet on the Bering side. Across the Aleutian chain, winds will be southwest around Dutch Harbor. Waves 3 to 6 feet either side there, and then turning more west and then northwest once you get near Atka and back toward Adak. Winds will be northwesterly 20 to 25 knots, and waves generally 6 to 8 feet there, either on the North Pacific or the Bering side. Saturday, winds will be southwesterly across the eastern Aleutians around 15 knots, waves 5-6 feet on the North Pacific side, 3 to 4 feet on the Bering side. Bit variable there north of Atka, but picking up out of the southeast to east, especially as you get toward Adak on through Kiska, with waves of 4 to 5 feet. Broad area of northeast winds through the eastern Bering, extending from Norton Sound down to south of St. Lawrence Island and to near St. Matthew. Expect waves of 4 to as high as 6 feet, and east to south northeast winds there in the vicinity of St. Paul with waves of 5 to 6 feet. By Saturday, still northeast winds out of Norton Sound, 15 knots, a few foot waves. Northerly winds across St. Lawrence Island down to Nunavik Island at 20 knots, waves 4 to 5 feet, and variable winds in the vicinity of St. Paul and St. George with waves running a few feet. And across the Arctic coast, winds will be northwesterly to westerly, strongest 25 knots around Kaktovik with waves there of 4 to 5 feet. Look for winds out of the northeast, 10 to 15 knots, extending down through the Bering Strait, lower Chukchi Sea, and picking up to northeasterly 20 knots there off of Port Clarence and north side of St. Lawrence Island. For Saturday, easterly winds along the far Arctic coast there, Kaktovik and Prudhoe Bay with waves running a couple feet. Northeast winds 15 to 20 knots, turning northerly through the Bering Strait and on the north side of St. Lawrence Island with waves generally running 3 to 4 feet there, lower Chukchi Sea down through the Bering Strait. And a quick check of the weather map. On Friday afternoon, we have a double barrel low, one hanging back toward the lower southeast quadrant of the Bering Sea, another one spinning up there on the North Pacific side of the Alaska Peninsula, just southwest of Kodiak Island. There'll be a band of some heavier rain showers, perhaps even embedded thunder. And then on Saturday, that low lifts further north, spreads rains up into Prince William Sound, and with it, we expect at least the winds not to be too terribly strong.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.